All right, YouTube, the Supreme Court is known, especially lately, for primarily issuing bad decisions. For instance, they're allowing, under some circumstances, police officers to violate the Fourth Amendment at a whim now. It's not even like circumstantial anymore. It's just, oh yeah, the Fourth Amendment, who gives a fuck about that? If they stop you for a speeding ticket, they could just do whatever they want or something like that. Basically, it's another intrusion of the police state. They're ruling on guns just the other day. I'll say something about this before I go into their good decision, which was, of course, in the Texas abortion case. Their decision regarding guns and domestic violence, this is one of those cases where something is unconstitutional, but I think most people think there's not really that compelling a reason to really give a crap about the class of person being inconvenienced. You know, the libertarian part of me says, of course, it's unconstitutional for the government to convert a right into a privilege. The fact that somebody has been convicted of a violent crime does not exempt them from the Second Amendment. But keep this in mind. Perpetual punishment is also unconstitutional. Now, the government puts somebody on a sex offender registry, forces them to give their DNA, puts them on a sex offender registry, tells them where they can and can't live. If they're a pedophile, if they're convicted of something like that, is there really that much, though, will in the public to worry about that constitutional issue, even though it is unconstitutional for the government to do that? Is that really sort of the first thing that we need to worry about? I think that domestic surveillance as a whole, protecting the Second Amendment as a whole, in general, repealing all for instance, what Hawaii just did, getting rid of that needs to be done as quickly as possible, their own registry for gun owners. Getting rid of all restrictions on castle doctrine and stand your ground, having shall issue concealed and open and constitutional carry nationwide. Making it clear there will be no additional forms of gun control for the general public. I think those are more compelling than really worrying about some fucking, wife beater having his pea shooter. That's just my thought, though. I'm a pragmatic libertarian. I think you need to pick and choose your battles wisely, and I think there are certain things that are more important than others. I think tops right now is still domestic surveillance, even with the attacks on the second. But let's give the Supreme Court applause for its one good decision thus far, other than slamming the door in the face of Obama's bullcrap on immigration. As I said, I don't have a problem with the essential plan that he put forward, but he's an executive. He doesn't get to make that determination. That is an overreach of the executive branch. But on the Texas abortion decision, I would applaud the Supreme Court. This is an old, dead, fucking tired issue, has been since after Roe v. Wade. States like Texas, they have really good economies, and they have a good standard of living, and a good quality of life, and a low cost of living, and people can defend themselves, and people have freedom to roam, and they've got good weather, and there are businesses everywhere, and everything's hunky-dory, and people have plenty of money for their beer and barbecue lifestyle in Texas. I saw it for myself. And the government of Texas, being as asinine as it can sometimes be, looks around and sees, oh, things are going so well here. The economy's up. Jobs are just fucking booming. Everyone wants to move here because it's like now the jobs bastion of the whole damn country. Half of California and New York are practically fleeing to come live around in some of these sort of small town Texas areas so they can have their fucking cow or their pig farm or open up a business front and they won't get completely crushed underfoot by taxes. Things are going so well. What can we do to screw this up and make ourselves an embarrassment? Oh, I know, we'll attack abortion, that old dead issue that's been dead since the early 70s. Can we please get past this bullcrap and focus on something that really matters? I understand that the evangelicals in this country think abortion's murder. Aren't you a little bit more concerned about the denigration of the Constitution when it comes to your right to own firearms? When it comes to your freedom to assemble, when it comes to your right to privacy, when it comes to the fact that the government is pissing away your money on a constant basis? There are so many. Here's the pragmatic sort of Trump populist movement at work. There are so many things that DC is doing that are shit fuckery, that it makes no sense to worry about moral issues. Additionally, this is not the first time that the Supreme Court has been brought in to rein in states that have attempted to piss all over a prior court decision on this topic. Abortion is legal in the United States. If you do not like the fact that abortion is legal, do not get an abortion. The same ethos I use with gay marriage, and it's if the right began using this ethos, it would take the wind out of the sails of the left and force them to do the same thing on things like guns. Well, you don't like guns? Well, don't buy a gun. It's as simple as fucking that. Leave one another alone. Do your... The first motto, I think this is telling. The first official coins struck in the United States, what did they say? Did they say, "In God we trust"? No. Did they say in Latin, "E pluribus unum," from one many? No, they didn't say that either. What did it say? "Mind your business." That's a fundamentally good principle to put into play in the modern United States. A lot of our misery has come from people with political or fiscal motives misusing the judicial system, misusing the courts to try to screw one another, whether it's a civil lawsuit or the government going after a class of criminals that haven't really committed a crime because there's no victim, whatever it happens to be. All the moralism, counter-moralism of the left, the right many years ago saying, "Oh, well, atheists should just shut up, and fucking Wiccans, they should shut up, Satanists should shut up, gay people should shut up," and now the left doing the same, all these fucking Christians should shut up, and everyone just telling one another that they somehow have fewer rights because of their opinion. Oh, this is a hate group, that's a terrorist, these people, these gun owners, they're too threatening, they're intimidating. Just leave these things alone. We should be focusing on, number one, reigning in government as a general principle. We don't need to keep using government to oppress other groups that we happen to disagree with, because if that group then gains dominance, it does the same thing. This has been a continual problem in our country. It's been a continual problem for more than a century. What we need to do is scale that back, rein in government far, far more heavily. We need to really, really tighten the leash until it's gagging, because otherwise we're not really going to have that much of a dynamic country left. It's like the old paradox about military power. We have the most powerful military in the world, but all our government does is misuse it, fritter away resources, spend too much on no-bid contracts, and then send them off to go get shot at in a country that has nothing to do with the wider world economy and nothing to do with actual geostrategy. And so it's the government's problem. It's not a problem of, oh, you support the troops in the war, or you don't support the troops, you're unpatriotic, or you're a warmonger. That's not even the issue. The issue is the government's at fault for everything that goes wrong when we're in a military endeavor. The government's at fault whenever the economy's fucked, because the government has seen fit to intervene undeservedly into the private marketplace. The government is responsible when there's violence. The politicians themselves are almost always the ones that have started the race debate. They're the ones that have exploited it generation after generation. When people look around, they say, "Oh, the far right's being emboldened by Trump," or no, they're not. They were already discussing before Trump even announced. This was already a major issue in the United States, the race debate bullshit. It was already there. He didn't start that. The fact that he capitalized upon it just shows he's doing what every other goddamn politician has ever done in the history of the United States. And it's about time, if we want to actually restore our functioning republic, if we want to keep most of our money and stop spending it on crap, then we need to rein in government. Government is at fault. I've said this before. The average white Joe did not screw black people during the segregation era. It was the government. State governments did that. Governments, elected officials, often without the consent of the people that they were governing. That's the problem. The federal government saw fit to oversee slavery. They're the ones that had no problem with it and debated it and acted like the lives of the slaves were just, oh, well, you know, they're not quite human, maybe a little bit. Are they human? We'll have a debate on that that'll last 3 or 4 years. They're the ones that frittered away their time wasting the people's precious money arguing over these issues. The average person largely still, even back then, they just wanted to be left alone. The average Southerner never owned slaves. They didn't have the money to own slaves. The average Northerner was more or less ambivalent. They didn't want to fight a war over this issue. They wanted common sense to prevail. Unfortunately, of course, it didn't. And now people, they go back and everyone either says, or a lot of people either say, oh, horrible imperialistic federalist North oppressing our Southern values, or, oh, these fucking cocksucking Southerners always with their racism and slavery, and they're still like that today. It's not even really what it was about. It has nothing to do with it anymore. It's a dead issue as well, but people still rant about this concept as well, and they're going to rant about abortion for 1,000 years. They don't really need to. It's a dead issue. The Supreme Court now several times has weighed in, and states will probably continue to do this nonsense even though they keep getting struck down. They should know that it's going to be called unconstitutional. Anyone with half a brain understood that this would get struck down anyway. Saying, oh, well, abortions, they need to have this license, and they need to have this facility, and they need to have this accreditation. There was never a purpose to it. Everybody knew it was just to shut down abortion clinics. I'm not sure why they fucking care. I'm not sure why the state of Texas's government gave a fuck in the first place, pretending to be religious. Most of these people aren't even religious. It's like when people talk about, oh, is Obama a Muslim, a Christian? And he doesn't care. None of these people, Trump doesn't care either. No, he's not a religious individual. Hillary, she doesn't give a fuck about Jesus or any of this other stuff. They'll use religion as a cudgel for votes. They'll use it to gain power. They'll use it to get your donation. Beyond that, most of them really don't give a fuck. And it'd be a lot scarier even if they did give a fuck, because then they'd just be zealots. It'd be even worse. See, like Sadiq Khan over there in London Stan, the Islamist mayor who is already instituting a form of Sharia law and forcing them to stop putting up ads on their bus system that depict like lingerie models and stuff. He says it's to protect women's imagery. Oh, well, women shouldn't be shamed by these, super thin models in their underwear on the buses. You actually believe that's the reason he's taking the ads down? He's taking them down because they don't conform to his religion. That's what happens when you have a religious individual in power. Jimmy Carter was the last religious president we had. We can see the result of that. Oddly enough, he didn't really care about the moral issues. He was a good guy. The Democrats should have drafted him to run for office. He'd be better than Hillary. I'd vote for Jimmy Carter over any of the current crop of people running. Even if he does think green energy will solve every problem on Earth, sort of like the first wave of Al Gore, only a little bit less pushy and a little bit more honest too. Hell, the dude reported he saw a UFO when he was at a party. I like the dude. I'm sorry, I just can't help but like Jimmy Carter, regardless of his liberal tax policies. But yes, congratulations to the Supreme Court for making two good decisions so far out of, a dozen decisions they've handed down. Everything else has been either like pro-police state bullshit, or they uphold affirmative action. It's like, oh, affirmative action's fine. Discrimination, what's that? It just doesn't make any sense to me. The Supreme Court is not doing very well. Last time they made a good decision was when they propped up gay marriage. And they said, yeah, if the state's going to be involved with issuing essentially a legal contract, it can't really determine which types of consenting adults can enter into such a legal contract. And all the Christians, of course, pretended that was the same as religious marriage. That's about all. Peace out.